So that is the second great problem with which we have to deal. The third is the power of patronage. The gross abuse of the power of patronage, started by Margaret Thatcher, refined into an art form by the present government. As Tony Benn is fond of telling us, there are 72 different articles of patronage which is given to a British Prime Minister. It extends from the bishops to the keeper of the Royal Garter. But in the middle, and of much more importance, is the appointment of ministers into the executive. It is something which has been grotesquely abused. It is used, we were talking about it only tonight over dinner. It is used as a control mechanism over the legislature. And I have sympathy with my colleagues, because now we live in the era of the professional politician. People who have done nothing in life except politics. They want to be politicians. I have sympathy with them. I've always wanted to be a politician. Happily, I became a barrister first for a very long time. But I understand what they want to do. They want to go into politics. And they want, many of them, are supremely motivated by the desire to create the welfare of the world, of their country, and they must know that the only reason you can do that, the only way you can do it, is by appointment to the executive. The only way you will get appointment to the executive is by the patronage of the Prime Minister, and it's the Prime Minister and the executive that you are supposed to control. And the dichotomy is immediate and obvious. And if it is misused, and it has been grotesquely misused, what you do is you undermine the main check and balance upon the executive, which is the legislature. And we have a Prime Minister who is preeminent in this respect. I'm no friend of the Prime Minister's. So, I, a little while ago, went on the Today programme and was asked about the Brown-Blair split, and I said that in my view I thought that we had the best Chancellor of the Exchequer that we'd had for half a century, and the worst Prime Minister we'd had for a century and a half. Chief Whip got in touch with me the following day and said, will you come and see me? And I said, of course, it's always a joy. So I went in to see her, and she said, Bob, she said, how could you say that Tony was the worst Prime Minister a century and a half? And I said, well, Hilary, I said, I've been thinking about it, and I have to say to you that on reflection, I think I was wrong. And my view is that I think you have to go back to Wellington. You can find a Prime Minister who's treated his own country with more duplicity and contempt. It didn't do my career prospects any good, but nonetheless, I believe, and I believe profoundly, that it is true. And into this nightmare constitutional state of affairs, of course, we have the injection, I've already spoken about the Prime Minister, but of something which is more exhibited in the Labour Party, and that is the whole concept of the new model army of new Labour. Peter Brooke, my man, now Lord Brooke, said in the House of Commons that we were now again to be ruled by Puritans. He did add that it would have been unlikely that our first great Puritan leader would have said to his first cabinet, call me Ollie, but nonetheless, it has a measure of truth. We are ruled by autocratic Puritans. It is a natural instinct of New Labour, and so we have a nightmare where we are ruled by autocracy, by Puritan autocracy, presiding over a free market economy. Difficult in the annals of political history to conceive of anything worse. So, here we are. Now, if you're not thoroughly depressed by this stage at the immense difficulties that we face, let me now immediately cheer you up. What is the antidote? The antidote is certainly not opposition. The opposition parties are effectively emasculated by what I have just set out. And in particular, they are emasculated by the power of the popular press. Political parties, opposition political parties, know that the forum in which they operate, namely the House of Commons, has effectively been emasculated. So they have to operate outside the House of Commons as well. And they are at huge disadvantages in the lobby system in doing so. And one of the reasons why people complain so vociferously about having no opposition in Parliament is for precisely that reason. It's not because the Tory party is particularly bad. Matter of fact, it is quite bad, but that doesn't matter very much. The fact is that the opportunities for opposition are denied to them. Which brings me to the importance of political dissidence, which is more important now than it has ever been, probably for 3 centuries. What is essential is that politicians, in my view, re-establish the concept, as we said before, of operating your political decisions on the basis of creative conscience rather than the basis of party, political or personal political advantage. And it's an idea which is, I'm telling you, which is beginning to catch root in Westminster. On our own particular side, I can tell you that we have a group of backbench members of Parliament called the Old Testament prophets. It comes as a fine body of men and women. I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from a speech that the Prime Minister made in the 1996 Labour Party conference when we were sailing towards government with a majority of 26% in the opinion polls. He made a speech, you may remember it, probably you don't, it's a long time ago, 1996, but he went completely off message. It's the speech that he made when he said Labour is coming home and started talking about my covenant with the British people, which rang the odd alarm bell. Now, yeah. But there was a part when he went completely off his script, and I was standing next to Jim Locherty at the time when he did so. And he said, and I was watching the script and it wasn't on it, and he said, we all know, he said, that we can trace this great movement of ours. And I thought, Chartists, Liberals, there we go. And he said, to the prophets of the Old Testament. And even the Labour Party conference, at that stage, in a state of semi-tumescence, there was a brief pause while they received and absorbed the idea that it was Moses, Elijah, Elisha, Jehoshaphat and Hosea who had been responsible for the foundation of the Labour Party rather than Keir Hardie. So we met afterwards, a group of us, similarly inclined people. We've grown, I'm pleased to say, much in numbers since that time. And we said that we would meet regularly. We would call ourselves the Old Testament prophets in honour of the Prime Minister's statement. It was a seminal moment when many of us realised that our dear leader was perhaps not entirely stable. Other of us thought that he might even be barking mad. The next thing that we must learn to do is that we must learn to use the power of the Fourth Estate, which those who have been dissidents have often in a fastidious way turned against. We must use the power of the press, and we must become used to doing so. And to a certain extent we are achieving some success. Nothing annoys the executive, nothing annoys the Prime Minister, nothing annoys the whips more than the sight of backbenchers using the media in precisely the same way as they attempt to manipulate it themselves.